So so where were you when welcome to the hour 30 mark where we start talking about Night Ranger. The where were you when you first became aware of Night Ranger? Do you remember just what?
Yep, yep, yep. It was at Four Seasons Arena in Great Falls, Montana, opening for ZZ Top, and I was a huge ZZ Top fan. I was so excited because they were going out on the Eliminator tour, and they had their MTV hits and all that. And being in Montana, I hadn't been exposed to a lot of stuff. And Night Ranger opened, and I remember everything about that show. I remember somebody threw this beach ball up on stage, and Jack was like sprinting all over the stage. Man, he had more energy than anybody had ever seen. And he's kicking this beach ball all the way to the back of the arena. And then they pass it back up, and he went up and actually tried to kick and tripped and fell down, ate it on the stage. But I remember harmonies. I remember the dual guitar thing. That was the first time that guitar became a huge thing for me, like the big rock guitar thing. And um, and of course, seeing this drummer showcased right up, just like putting him basically right up front, facing the band but facing the crowd, and this dude that could sing his ass off and play at the same time. One thing that I will say, I mean, Kelly's my bud. I love this guy. And so I'm not saying this because he's my buddy, but he's not a spring chicken. And that mother effer hits so hard. He's got so much energy. He plays still to this day like that. It inspires the hell out of me, man, because, he's got a couple years on me. And I'm thinking if I could just hold on and play like that, as long as he does. But back then, yeah, that band was firing on all cylinders, man. Midnight had just come out. And, you know, then I discovered, Dawn Patrol, and got to go back. And it's all I listened to, for about a year. Both of those records are, they're in such heavy rotation. I've got my Desert Island records, that all have 10 albums downloaded at any given time where, I can go right back to that point in my life. I was 13, 14 years old, puberty, met my girlfriend, like everything about rock and roll was sexy and dangerous. And, I had aspirations of being a freaking rock star. That's all I wanted to do because of bands like Night Ranger. But that show in particular, I remember just the way I felt after that show, and not to take anything away from ZZ Top, but that was a different thing altogether. There's God bless ZZ Top for going on after Night Ranger, but really, there's it's a tough thing for any band to go on after a band like that because to this day they give 100%. I've never seen a band I've never seen that band mail it in. Even when they do like a stripped down acoustic thing, there's still so much talent there and they have fun. I love like Brad is just a freaking goofball. It's hilarious to see him, just he'll pick somebody out in the crowd and he's picking his nose or he's doing something, just to ham it up. And he's a total ham. But when I see him still, I feel like that 14-year-old kid, getting to see them again. And of course, the hits meant a lot to me. The song Night Ranger for sure was one that just it kicks my ass every time. When they do it live, I remember, I don't know, I've probably seen them 5 or 6 times in the last 7 or 8 years. And when they do Night Ranger, when they do that song, I get butterflies, man. I'm like, oh my God, I remember the first time I heard it, and I just speaking of, because you were talking about these old albums, I would kill to find like an original pressing of Ranger. If anybody can ever get that, you don't have that, do you?
Well, that's a big conversation with the we've had because the urban legend is 10,000 copies were printed.
Okay.
Um, I've been collecting Night Ranger vinyl for over 30 years. The other guys in the podcast longer than me. If there was one out there, one would have showed.
Okay. So you
So
don't think any made distribution?
here is it's one of two things. Because there's rare records out there. Like
Yeah.
what is who was the maybe it was Prince released a promo. It was he was going to release a record. They released the promos. He didn't want it released. They pulled all the promos back.
Right.
There's 2 or 3 known to be in circulation, and this dude just found 2 in his attic from when he was a radio guy, and I think they sold for like 20,000 each, something like that. So what I'm saying is, there's rare records out there. They
Yeah. Right.
show up,
Yeah.
and uh, so one
So
of two
you're saying
things.
there is no Sasquatch?
No, either one of two things. One of two things happen. Either it never happened, which is what I think happened, or they successfully destroyed every single copy.
Wow.
All right. And there's been times where they said, well, we put stickers, Night Ranger stickers over.
Yeah.
Well, no matter how good you try, stickers are going to be a little bit crooked, or
Right.
people are going to peel them off. You're going to see that stuff. None of
Yeah.
that exists. Uh, they've said that there was a musician they knew from the Bay Area that they named that they think had a copy, and I don't know him, but I think we're friends on Facebook and know him from there. And so I messaged him. We talked about it. He goes, I don't, but it was a good lead because he was on Boardwalk Records in another
Okay.
band at that
Yeah.
same time. So like, okay,
Oh
that has a
yeah.
little bit of substance.
Right.
But I can show you, maybe, maybe not, maybe. Oh, oh, what we got here? Here we go. Hold on. I will show you this. Well, there's me
Oh.
with my Midnight Madness record and my Snoopy shirt.
Oh my God. Look at that. That is
My
awesome.
That's on my aunt's bed, so I snuck back there and listened to that.
The only thing I have within reach is my Kelly Keagy Vic Firth American Classic Extreme 5Bs right there. Those are what I play with at home, but that's not the drum company I play with. So.
You're
But,
like, Kelly's like, he's a really big fan. He's always wanting drumsticks.
yeah.
uh,
Yes.
but here you go.
Oh wow! Look at that. Go ahead and pull back. Oh, look at that.
So this,
God, that's sweet.
so they were the range. They were Ranger. Then
Right.
there's this group from Kentucky, country group that they saw in a trade magazine. This is the story. Now showbiz
Right.
works just like the Ranger record out there, right? It's
Right.
to me, it's just a good story. That's why they keep telling. But they saw this. Oh shit! There's a country western group, Rangers. So this would have been the record. This is about 82.
God.
I actually tracked down this guy and had him on the podcast.
Did you?
Yeah, Britt Gilmore. These were the Gilmore brothers. And dude, they got some crazy stories. Like they're kind of like a group that almost made it like 2 or 3 times.
Right.
But they were in like I said, like it was kind of like the first part of it in the 70s. They were a little bit more like country gospel,
Okay.
and they had this old. They were kind of like the Oak Ridge Boys, right?
Okay. I was going to say Oak Ridge Boys
All
in
right.
Alabama kind of had that.
So they had this guy, and I can't think of his name, but he was known in the country music like world. Okay, he was a good like gospel country singer, and anyways, he knew Elvis and like J.D. Sumner and the Stamps.
Okay.
So when in the early 70s, when they were on tour, they stopped at Graceland, and he's telling the story, like I can't remember his name, Heavy, something like that. He goes up, and next thing you know, the bus is going up to Graceland, and they spent the evening in Graceland singing like old gospel songs with Elvis.
With Elvis.
Yes. But they had different like they would go work like in Canada actually for like 2 or 3 months a year and play like one of these big resorts there. And then like, okay, that deal breaks down, and then they get back together and they try another one. And with that, they signed to this label out of like maybe Louisville, Kentucky. And they turn out to be some shady characters. I can't remember the whole story, but like they turn on the news one day and they find out like the owner of the record label has fled overseas for tax
Wow.
evasion and think there was a murder somewhere.
Shit.
And yeah. So they had again these all these highs and lows, but yeah, that's the closest to Ranger you're going
God.
to get. I do have a few like their records from the 70s. You know what's crazy? Like I can find the 45 of this, but I can't find an actual studio record. So when I was
Wow.
talking to him, I told him that. He goes, "Yeah, there's a whole record um that we did." And a couple months after we had that interview, he texted me and asked me for my address, and he found like an unopened cassette that
Okay, a
he still
cassette. Oh,
yes. So
that's
and
awesome.
I still will check here and there, and I have still never found it on record or cassette. So but yes, that's the Ranger um
I
mythology.
just I just got this to digitize all of my cassettes. Actually, it's yeah, it'll capture,
Yeah,
and
put
send it. So that's what I've been doing, man. I've been taking all those old cassettes and digitizing. So during the pandemic, that was my break.
I need to do that because I got some Night Ranger bootlegs
Oh, yeah.
on only on cassette. There's a few that I won't say I'm the only person in the world that has them, but because I got them from someone, but I don't see them out there at all.
Yeah.
Um, so I need to do something with them. But so uh, so we talked about a little bit. So when did your path with Kelly start crossing?
You know, Flock. So at the beginning of my time with Flock, I actually did Animotion and Flock. I was subbing for New Shoes, another 80's sort of pop band, and we were doing this gig in the Dominican Republic called 80's in the Sand. That was like 7 years ago, and um, Kelly and Jen, his wife, came down to this gig, and we had this big band dinner where all a bunch of the bands all got together, one big banquet table, and we had so many mutual friends. He's real close with Dean Castronovo. Dean and I have been buddies for a long time, and when Kelly had some health issues, Dean was kind of helping cover
Mm.
those things. And so Dean, there were a couple of times where Dean would call me out on the road and put Kelly on. And we hadn't met personally, but dinner was one of those deals where sitting down with Kelly, I felt like we'd been friends forever. He and his wife really embraced me, man, and I thought the world of him. We hung out a bunch that weekend, and actually all sorts of crazy Night Ranger experiences. Then like Brad and I were dancing on the stripper pole at the dance club, and that night, and
Brad, no
yeah, he's
way.
such a shy guy. Brad, it's really hard to pull him out of his shell. You can't get him to show, you can't get him to speak a word. You can't get him to, like
Yeah.
come out of his shell. But Kelly, the thing that I loved about him was his decency. I really felt like, man, this guy, he's, you know, there are very few people that you feel connected to like that in the music business that you feel like, man, I would trust this guy with my kids. That's how I felt with him the first time I met him.
They always say, you know, don't meet your heroes or
Right.
whatever. And I always just say, Kelly proved that one wrong. That
Yeah.
one's, um, but yeah, what you were saying, he's great guy and um,
He's humble. He's
yeah.
funny. You know what the thing is about Kelly, that people that, I mean, you of course know this, but one thing about Kelly is when you sit and talk to him, as long as he can hear you, um, but he'll look you in the eye. He's listening to what you have to say, and he
Mm.
remembers stuff that I was blown away by, because that weekend there was a difficult time. I was separating with my wife, and my kids kind of were struggling because I was away. I was in the Dominican Republic, and Kelly just remembered so much about that experience. Said, "Man, you come down to Phoenix, we'll hang." we eventually became great pals. He invited me out to his wedding in Chicago, and his wife, I love them like family. I had him come out. I was up in Portland, but I have season tickets for the Seahawks. Great seats, second row, right off the grass. They happen to be playing Cardinals, which is her team, for New Year's. And so I had them come up and we spent New Year's Eve together. The gal that I was dating, and they were so freaking wonderful human. They're wonderful human beings. And um, that saying about not meeting your heroes, it's the same thing I have with Dave Aberzies. Dave showed me that you can be an incredibly decent, generous human being and have whatever, success and I think it's whether you're in music or you're an artist or an actor or whatever. I think the character is so key and important, and I gravitate towards those people. I want them in my life, and uh, my best friend in Portland, unfortunately, is afflicted with ALS. He's an amazing drummer, and it took his career away, his ability to play. Kelly came to town, and he and his wife came over to my buddy's house and wanted to talk to him, and they didn't know him other than knowing that he was my buddy. And um, you know, people just don't do that unless they're really, they. Some people in the business might do that for a publicity stunt, right? They make sure the camera's on them, and Kelly and Jen aren't. They're the kind of people that really do want to make the world a better place. And so this is not me campaigning for Kelly for president, but um, I think the fans out there that might revere Kelly because of his contributions in music, once they got to know him as a human being, I think they'd realize even more that that guy is a freaking prince of a human being. And you know,
Yeah.
I'm grateful that dude is on this planet, man. I feel like he's my brother.
Well, with Night Ranger kind of being off the last couple of months, um, there hasn't been a lot of
Yeah.
interaction, and I hadn't talked to Kelly for a couple of weeks, and he sent me a text and, hey, blah blah blah. They're kind of doing this. How you been? What you been up to? You doing all right? And they're like, yeah, I've been doing this, and of course I'm doing all right, dude. Fucking Kelly Kagi just checked in on me.
Yeah.
Just
Right. Yeah,
right,
man.
yeah.
People just yeah.
So,
Rock stars aren't supposed to do that. They're not supposed to care about anybody else but themselves, right?
but um, but yeah, it's just um, Kelly's a good guy, and Jen as well. I mean, I've met Jen numerous times, and uh, being in my real world profession, I've helped her out with some questions and stuff. So it's always good, talking to them and talking to her when I do get to see her when she's at some shows. Do you ever wish
Yes.
that yeah, yeah, wishing. Do you ever wish that maybe Flock of Seagulls would have been on some bills with the Scorpions, and when that drum seat came open, maybe you could have, finangled your way in there a little bit?
Um, you talked about not wanting to meet your heroes. Unfortunately, I did get to know the drummer from Scorps pretty well. The guy that's was in the band for about 20 years, and it really disappointed me.
Herman Rarebell, whatever his name is.
No, Herman was a solid dude. Yeah, no,
I know who you're talking about.
yeah.
Um,
I felt like drummers there's a stereotype out there for us. We're unreliable, we're flaky, we're douchebags. And I think that stereotype was kept up a little bit, and I'm disappointed. But I think redemption. So I love being a fan of Scorps. My favorite bands. I don't know that I would want to be their drummer, because then I wouldn't appreciate the music as much. Um, I am crushing so hard in this band. Another band from upstate New York that's right across the border. They've been around for 25 plus years, but I'm when we have days off, I'm flying out to see them. I just flew up to Toronto to see this band called Big Wreck. I don't know if you know this band, but
I know the name. Trying to think
oh,
where. maybe like a late 90s band somewhere
They came
around
out in late '90s, yep, and they just didn't break. They're one of those bands that Canadian fans know them,
there.
and I am such a rabid fan for this band right now. That's a band that, yeah, they need a drummer for a gig or two. I don't, I would never want to take somebody's gig over, but I've got a couple of like guilty pleasures of bands that people would be so surprised that I would be into, like bucket list gigs that, because I'm such a rocker dude, but you'll laugh. Kelly and I talked about this. I freaking love Rick Springfield, dude, and I want to do one gig with Rick before I'm dead. Because he is another guy, dude, 74 years old. He plays his ass off. He's got so much energy. He's a rocker that just happens to be, a handsome soap opera star, right? But Jorge, his drummer, is a wicked drummer. I would never want something bad to happen to him and take his gig. I just want to do one gig. Billy Idol, another
Yeah.
one, right? Eric Eldenius. I know that drummer. He's a wicked drummer. Billy Idol's such a badass. When I watch him live, I'm like, oh man, Sammy Hagar, another
Yeah.
one. Jorge, the dude that's playing with Rick, just played with Sammy last night at a gig, and I sent him a text. I'm like, dude, you kind of a douchebag today, because I
So
am.
it'll be like, hey, I'll be like going up to, the powers to be in Night Range. I'm like, hey, I don't know if you guys should be looking into us, but Kevin's been hanging around singing all Kelly's parts and practicing, and
Oh,
then he was trying to get Kelly to come over to him while they're standing near this elevator shaft.
oh yeah.
Ah,
You know what? Here's the thing. I'm putting this out there. I could never. I did serenade my girlfriend to Sister Christian when we were 14, but there's a reason I'm not a lead singer. And, I could sing some backups all day long. But if Kelly ever wanted to just get up and do what he's done on a handful of gigs where he's got his buddy back there, I'd love to just back him up, for a night, man. I know that set inside and out. If I could nail a night of Night Ranger tunes, and it would be such an honor to play with him, for him. But yeah, I wouldn't want the gig because you can't win on a gig like that either. I remember talking to him and Brad about the Aussie gig when they had their break, and Ozzy, when Randy unfortunately died in his accident. I had Rudy Sarzo on my podcast. We talked about that whole experience and how awful and traumatic it was when Brad got the call to get out on tour with Ozzy, and it was just like boom, the next day he's got to get out there and do the gig. And then you see all the fans with the huge posters saying like, fuck you, you're not Randy Rhoads. And he's like, well, I know I'm not Randy Rhoads, but I'm not going to say no to Ozzy, right? And you can't win no matter what. I don't think anybody going to see Night Ranger, if they saw somebody else playing, without Kelly, it just wouldn't work. Even that's not because he's my friend. The only other person that I know on the planet that really would do that thing justice on a night off, if Kelly wanted to take a night off, is Dean Castronovo. Guy sings like a bird, plays his ass off on drums. I know that he and Kelly and Dean are both dear, dear friends. And, he's sort of earned his stripes in that role as a singing drummer with Journey, when he's out doing his thing. But as a Night Ranger fan, I'd be pissed if I went to go see Night Ranger and it wasn't Kelly up there singing and playing.
mhm.
But yeah, my bucket list is I'll do a sound check with him, a rehearsal. But as a fan, I wouldn't want to see me up there playing those tunes. No way, man.
Kelly's been kidnapped. Now they've left a note saying they will return him
Yeah.
at the curfew time that's on the day sheet.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but until then, you have to find someone else.
No, man. Yeah. That's I think I told you I set up my kit like his back in the day, and I was just such a huge fan. Everything, the presentation, the way he played, and made it look effortless. But somebody from the band just shared with me some of that footage where I was covering "New Girl Now" from Honeymoon Suite and a couple of other songs from that era. And I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, I was mostly on key, but you know, that dude Kelly, it's ridiculous. That guy's too gifted. Damn you, Kelly Kiki.
And I mean, his voice,
Yeah.
I don't know, when I first started, I guess maybe helping him out, I threw Seven Wishes on the turntable, and I'm just doing something, and faces come on,
Oh,
and I'm just like, God, that is so fucking good. And then I'm
yeah,
like, you know what? I can. I'm listening to faces right now. It's fucking awesome. So, just
yeah,
like I could do it. I'm going to. I don't give a shit. I'll fanboy out a little bit, but you know, uh, it's just his, just those vocals on in those
yeah.
tracks. I mean,
Look,
um,
that's what I don't get. He doesn't smoke. He's got the rasp of the rock and roll thing. Like Dave Meniketti, you're a Y&T fan too. Meniketti
yep.
is the same kind of thing, right? I love Y&T so much. And how Dave can sing like that, it sounds like he's got a little bit of a smoker voice, but they don't smoke. How does Kelly do that? Dude, I'm jealous, man. But
Maybe I don't know. It could be the Coquiana drip. Uh, but but
there
uh,
was a little bit of that back in the day. Yeah.
but yeah. I mean, to me, like my ultimate tour would be something Y&T and Night Ranger. Like
Oh,
both
yes, dude. Oh,
both of those bands are just like
yeah.
Meniketti and the guys in Night Ranger are just on top
Yeah.
of their game. They still
Totally.
sound good, look
Oh,
good. Um,
yeah.
and to
Dude, what
me,
about
the headliner you could put D. Snyder.
yeah.
I like Twisted Sister and everything, but I saw D. Snyder in Vegas. They were doing like this, like Rudy Sarzo and Bruce
Yeah.
Kulick and all these guys were there, and they were playing all the rock hits and shit. And D. Snyder came out, and I was amazed how fucking good he was. So
Yeah.
it's like Y&T, Night Ranger, D. Snyder. You got basically that 80's rock,
Yeah.
and Night Ranger can compete. Yeah,
Oh,
you got,
dude.
I
Yeah.
mean, even Twisted Sister had the price. I mean, all these bands got ballads. But
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, nobody would say that they think of just the price when they think of Twisted Sister, right? I mean, everybody thinks we're not going to take it. But that's, I mean, I'm glad that you brought them up because, there's another band, right? D. Snyder's, he's up there in age, incredible shape, still sings his ass off. He's got tons of energy. And, but, you're talking about like they're these bands that can still bring it, and you could kind of put them, any one of them, at a different level of sort of headlining or whatever. But the one thing that I value so much when I see a band that's whatever, a legacy band from my youth, when they come out and they've got more energy than anybody else in the crowd, and they're saying pretty much, we challenge you guys to keep up with us, right? So come along for the ride. If you keep up with us, we're going to give you a show. Like I've seen Y&T so many times because they're here in the Bay. When I was in Portland, they'd come up that area all the time. I'd see them every year, and the guys all became dear friends of mine as well. Like I talked about with Kelly and the Night Ranger guys, all those dudes in Y&T, they're so down to earth, sweethearts. Dave Meniketti and his wife is managing the band. She is such a sweet chick, and she's making sure that his health is up. She's he's got his juicer, his little blender that he brings on the road, and he's juicing up his greens every day, and that's his mo. And so he had his bout. He beat his cancer, and he's kicking ass right now and doing well. And even though those guys haven't played as much because of his health scares, he's planning on getting out there and kicking ass. And dude's been around for a long time, right? I mean, that band was playing in the '70s.
yeah, I mean, they've been around just as long as Kiss. Now,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
didn't become maybe, household names until the early 80's, but they were out
But should
there.
have.
Yeah.
Should have, right? I
Oh,
mean,
definitely.
yeah, I would say they're probably the most underrated band from the era, and I tell people that a lot. They're like, well, they had Summertime Girls. Yeah, it was an MTV hit. But if you go ask 1,000 people on the street, just an average Joe, they're gonna Y&T what? And that's a travesty, right? Because I think people should know that band, man. They anybody that's out there that was in the MTV, well, the Sunset Strip era, when you watch The Dirt, and you like when the TV show of the book came out from Motley Crue, Y&T is right there at the beginning. They're showing posters in the Sunset Strip era. Y&T was out there way before all those other bands, and most guys that are in the big guitar bands will say Dave Meniketti was their inspiration before a lot of other dudes, and so
As good a guitar player he is, he's a better vocalist. Like that's
dude,
what's
well, I mean, how can you say better or? They're
yeah,
both ridiculously
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I think most people don't realize what a badass guitarist he is. I mean,
Well,
when you
Ozzy
see,
wanted him.
oh, he did. I didn't know that.
I think like maybe right around maybe when maybe like Jakey Lee
Okay,
uh
wow,
he was wanting Meniketti. I think that's right era
wow.
because Jakey Lee was what maybe up to like 86 or so. So I think
Mhm.
it would have been before Jakey Lee. So that's who he was wanting,
Wow.
and so he considered it.
How different would Y&T or with Ozzy have been? Because he probably wouldn't have had the tenure, right? I mean, he probably would have done a couple years and moved on, like most of Ozzy's guitarists did. But yeah, I mean, that's another thing too. Like that,
Well,
you've never seen Y&T mailing it in. The dude
no,
has never coasted.
the only thing with Y&T was, I mean, as much as I love him, uh, their song, I won't say basic, 'cause that's very bad, but where Night Ranger, like all these little nuances, right? To the spice in these songs. And I think it's because you had, I'm not saying the other guys didn't, but you had maybe another vocalist. I don't know
Mm,
what it was, but uh to me, that's just the one thing Y&T lacked in their songs. They had these great songs, but it's dun 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 dun, dun chorus, dun 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 dun, chorus, guitar solo, and there's none of that little bit of weaving that maybe Fitz would bring into. And they tried. I mean, they brought in Jeff Paris to
right.
write, an album with them, um, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. I just think to become more commercial and to
Yeah.
because I was listening to Mean Streak,
Oh my
the
God.
record today, and there's great songs, and I'm listening to some of these songs. I'm like, it is 1 2 1 2 3
Yeah.
back to
Right.
1 2. It's like they had just done something a little bit more with some of these other songs, but you still can't argue with Mean Streak and Contagious and I'll Cry for You and just
Yeah.
the whole Contagious record is and how did what was the song the ballad off of 10 um
Oh, Tent Lovers.
what's that
Don't be afraid of the dark.
yeah, how
Yeah.
was that not fucking it?
It was. It was an MTV, but it was the wrong time.
Yeah.
It was just at the beginning of the grunge era, man. And so, but yeah, that. Well, it was just before grunge, but
Yeah,
yeah, it
it
just
was 1990. There's no reason high
yeah,
enough, was a hit
right,
later that year.
yeah,
And it's just like, how was that song?
right,
And I get Contagious because, they were a band with bad luck. Like they go to Geffen
yeah,
and they're kind of following like Poison a little bit. They got
right,
the glam, and right
yeah,
when it comes out, it's Guns N' Roses, Aerosmith, White
right,
Snake.
right.
Hey, you just missed the boat on that one. Um, but um, but yeah, like I said, I could talk, Y&T all day.
Yeah, I love that you got your rock history, man. This is good
Well,
stuff. Like,
here's
so
the
let me
thing.
ask you this: Are you how hip are you to Kicks?
Now, Kicks, not so much. Now I do know that, and here's the thing: like Y&T, for the longest time, I didn't listen to Y&T because when I was a kid, it was Summertime Girls,
Right.
and I'm like,
Like, oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. How
you know,
glossy, right? Yeah,
and I didn't have anyone. Again, I'm only, I'm 8 years old in 1985. I don't have any money. Like I ain't like I go buy their cassette and then discover other stuff. My
yeah,
aunt, anybody in my family, I didn't have any older brothers, so I wasn't introduced to that. So it was later on, like, oh shit, what's this?
yeah.
But Kicks, I've tried. Like, what was the record that they released? Maybe like 92, 93, brown cover.
Blow my fuse.
Yeah, like
Or Hotwire. Hotwire is that one,
Hotwire.
but
Yeah.
because they're another band like we're talking about where everybody would know, oh, don't close your eyes, right?
Mhm.
But that band, it was another band from like 80, 81 that was a punk rock band that just happened to have kind of a little bit more of a glam look, a kind of a sassy look. And when like Don't Close Your Eyes came out, kind of a glammy vibe. But they yesterday announced their retirement, that they're going to pack it up in September. I have a weekend off next week and I'm flying to Maryland to see him because I've never seen him live. And I don't, it's a rare thing for us to have any time off right now. We're doing so many shows. And I'm like, you know what, man? I've liked that band since 1985, 86. All of my adult years, I don't want to die not having seen that band live because I think they're like these bands that we're talking about where they have such a rabid cult following, right? And
Mm.
I followed their stuff a lot. I know, I mean, I love their material. They're kind of a guilty pleasure because most people, when I say Kicks, they're like, oh, that glammy "Don't Close Your Eyes" band. But they're a punk rock band that has danger and an edge to them, and they've never taken a break. Steve Whiteman is probably 90,000 years old. That dude, I mean, their drummer just he had to take a little bit of a break. He
Yeah.
had some health problems, and they're coming back to do a handful of shows because they just want to do it for the fans. Some bands would just say, "Screw it, man. We're just, I mean, we're all getting older. I mean, thank God, Jack is kicking ass and he's, doing great right now, right? It's a beautiful thing to see that the fans stood by and they did what they could to take a little bit of a break. But we all have to really look at, all right, where is our life 10 years down the road? The Kicks guys are going, all right, we're gonna finish this out for the fans, and they're doing this in Maryland, where that's their home. I don't have any other reason to go to Maryland other than to go see a Kicks show, and I feel kind of funny, being a dude in his early 50s flying to Maryland to go see Kicks, but fuck it, man. I don't. There's no tomorrow promised, and so
Yeah.
I
The only I was at Monsters of the Mountain, which is like a
yeah,
2-3 day thing they got in Gatlinburg.
right,
And
Tennessee, yeah,
yep. And me and Eric and I, Levy from
yeah.
Night Ranger, we had some time during the day. So this is like the little shit that I can get used to. It's like I'm back there. Like I don't like people to begin with, so like I don't like crowds and all that shit. Like if I go to shows, like I like to have like the seats. Like I've walked out of shows when it's just packed asses to elbows. Like I'm too old for this. But anyways, so we're back in the dressing room and like, hey, you want to go out and check out whoever's playing? And so we grab some free beers and walk out, and that's who we watched was Kicks.
Oh,
So
really? Okay,
yeah,
you got to see
so
him.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So um, that's my. But Kicks is when talking to people, kind of like Night Ranger, they're always known for their live show. Like
Right.
that's what you always hear is like, yeah, you might not know their songs, but
Yeah.
you'll enjoy them live. So Kicks is one of those groups that, and then there are groups from the 80's that I just never like Dawkins. I never
Right.
gravitated to Dawkins. I mean, I know a lot of people do, and but
I saw them early. I mean, I don't want to interrupt that story, but I just had Jeff Pilson, and he was my last guest on my podcast last week, where we talked about those early days of Dawkins and how I saw him on the Monsters of Rock tour in 1988. Scorpions, Motley Crue, Dawkins, Metallica, and Van Halen. Right, so Dawkins, the middle band, right in the middle of the day, no lights. You don't get the big production show, and they had to hold their own with Metallica and Motley and well, no, it wasn't Motley. It was Scorpions, Van Halen, Metallica, Dawkins, Kingdom Come. Uh, Interesting drummer
yeah,
pairing. Uh, but Scorps were my band, right? I went to go see Scorps, and I remember thinking, oh, let's see how Dawkins holds up. At that point, Dawkins was at the height of their game, right? And they did hold their own. There was, it wasn't just Don Dawkins. George Lynch, right, is a virtuoso guitarist, and they had the big songs. But I didn't gravitate towards them either. I know what you're saying, right? The songs didn't get you enough where all of a sudden you're just a lifelong only Dawkins fan, right? I'm going to fight for Dawkins until the end. And then to me, it's sad to kind of watch now, I mean, I get disappointed watching a show, like, well, some,
yeah. Well, again, that's where I tell people, I was like, it's very rare that, and I'm obviously talking about Night Ranger, it's very rare that a band has one of their best decades in their fourth decade.
right.
It's like, you guys don't understand how great it is, this era from 2011 on, where we have a band that's released 4 studio records and they're good.
Right.
We have a
Nobody mailed
band,
it in.
yeah, we have a band that sounds good, right? We have a band that looks good.
Yeah.
Not and listen, I dude, I'm not one to talk, but then again, I'm not on stage either. Right.
Right. Oh
So
no, but you're
but
right though, man. They really do take care of themselves in
yeah,
all respects, man. Dude, I'm sure you have too. I heard tracks from the new record. I'm floored, bro. It is so heavy and so big. It sounds like a freaking their anthem rock songs, Doesn't sound like 2023 Night Ranger. It sounds like historical Night Ranger. I can't believe how big it sounds. I who does that, right? This long into their career, but yeah,
I
I'm
mean
jealous.
you could be, think like REO Speedwagon. They've had what, one studio album in
Right,
25 years.
right.
I it could be Dawkins where you just have one guy and it's not that great. And or it could be, Loverboy. Yeah, they got the songs, but they look like they're 65. Um,
Right. They do
and
sound good though. That is
yeah,
one thing. Like, holy shit, how he can sing that
yeah,
way still,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah. So it's like I tell people, if you don't know how lucky we got it, you need to, because you're getting everything that
yep,
you could want. And even as much as I love Y&T, the one thing they lack, new music. They've just had Face Melter, and that's
right.
really the only out studio record probably in close to
Yeah,
30 years. I mean, they had a couple in the 90s, Endangered Species, and
yeah. Like, I
but
think of anything after. Did they not put anything out after Face Melter?
no, that's their last studio
Wow.
record.
And it's a great record. I mean, that
Yeah.
record's so good, but yeah, yeah. Well,
Yep.
good point.
So even with bands that do have some of it,
Yeah,
they don't have it all. And so yeah, for a band to still be doing that is phenomenal. And when we were looking at the schedule, I sent Ed, Night Ranger's tour manager. I'm like, you're going to be busy about mid June to middle of August, because I'm looking at this calendar and I'm putting some stuff into like Linktree or something, and it's just all right every day. And Night Ranger's a weekend band. It's
yeah,
you know Friday, Saturday, and
yep.
that's maybe an occasional Thursday or whatever. And no, this with that Brett Michaels tour and
Oh
them trying
yeah,
to fill in the gaps, because touring is expensive now, and if they're going to have a bus, well,
yeah.
it doesn't make any sense to return it every 3 or 4 days. So they are just piling on these dates, and
Oh, I was going to tell you about the lineup because we should look at shows that you might be attending because I'd love to come out and see you on one of these. This show that we're doing with them, Thunder Ballad,
Lincoln, California.
yeah, that one, yeah. So
Yeah, I was thinking about it because they're playing Vegas the first and the second.
right, yep,
Yep. So and Ed's birthday, I think, is that Friday.
okay.
So I know there's going to be a lot of hookers and crack cocaine involved.
Ah,
So
nice.
so
Yeah.
I texted them. I'm like, listen, I'm going to come out for your birthday because a lot of hookers and crack cocaine.
Right.
So, Ed just, he knows by now that I'm just full of shit. But um, he just like LL. I'm like, no, really. I mean, you can call them ladies of the night, but they're hookers. Um,
I, well,
but
well I feel like a little kid, dude, because I'm getting paid to go hang out with my buddies, right? It's always fun when we do like travel shows, but half the bands on that bill are bands that I played with. It's funny. A Flock of Seagulls, Naked Eyes, Missing Persons, Animotion, Stacy Q. I've played with all of those. Uh, General Public's on the gig, or dear friends of mine. Wang Chung are some of my best friends. Night Ranger.
Night Ranger's like the weird band in the mix.
Yeah, it is.
Uh,
And I'm so grateful. That promoter that does that gig, because we do some package shows with a lot of those other bands from that era, but that promoter always brings in like one oddball. We've done that one with Loverboy, we've done that one with Starship, we've done that one with I'm trying to think of like who else we've done that gig where it's always a similar lineup, but then there's the one rock thing. And when I saw that announcement come out, I texted Kelly. I'm like, dude, we are hanging, man. It's I'm pumped. Like,
because
dude.
I've been all over the world with the military. I've been overseas like 10 times, but I've never been to California, Oregon, and Washington.
What?
Yeah.
How could that be?
Well,
Well, that venue is not something exciting. It's right outside Sacramento. Well, it's a big parking lot.
So I was thinking about flying out to Vegas and maybe seeing the Friday night show, and then renting a car and then driving like through Death Valley and all that shit. Trying not to die, and then go see the show Sunday, I think it is, right, in Lincoln.
Yeah.
And then maybe head like San Francisco, go find Sentimental Street and see if I can track down Eddie and all that shit. So anyways, that's what I'm
coming out tonight.
Yeah. Well, he lives the tenderloin life. But Andy wears his trousers real tight.
Oh my God, yeah. There have been a few lyrical choices that maybe they could think, they could go back on, but they were just kids writing that stuff, right? So
I always give them shit with trousers.
Yeah.
Like certain words shouldn't be in songs. Like
that's not a rock and roll lyric.
And I was arguing with someone the other day, like they were arguing about Sheryl Crow. I'm like, Sheryl Crow deserves to be in the Hall of Fame for just being able to have a hit song with the lyric diddly squat.
Yeah.
Like right there, like if you can have that, like I'll give her all the props. But
nice.
But yeah, I always tell people too, like, yeah, I'm 6 years old in that, picture. And what I'm learning right here is cocaine and women, they will treat you the same.
Yes, they oh my God, man. Like so many great stories from Kelly about that album cover and the recording of that album. Like, yeah, like I don't know if he shared some of that stuff on your podcast or if he's even able to, but
we've had he talked about the back cover of Dawn Patrol. So the lasers and how they had lights in the ground. And we just had Mark Newman on, who was Brad's original guitar tech, currently on the road with Kiss. And
for Tommy.
He was talking about the back of Midnight Madness. He's the gorilla on the top of the building.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Kelly told me about that, but there were some stories that went along with that.
I don't know if I know all those.
I have to ask them about.
I do remember them talking. I think like maybe it's their manager is the astronaut,
right?
And yeah, I think like what was it? Was that there's one picture of something like, yeah, we were out all night and blitzed, and then we did. Maybe it's that back cover. I can't remember now, but you know what? It was the 80s. It's probably 80. Pick a random photo. Yeah, we were out that night and blitzed.
Right.
That's what I tell people too. Like, hey, when did this record or what this record? Hey, we ask one of the guys. I'm like, they are the absolute last people that I
right. They don't remember any shit. Yeah, the fans know so much more about those memories. And, even honestly, there's a Festival of the Arts that's been asking about the significance and the meaning behind the first Flock of Seagulls album. And they've been trying to get a hold of me to get that information. I sent it to our singer and he's like, I don't know. So I tracked down the artist that painted the album cover. And he first came back and said, I can tell you what a pain in the ass they were to work with. I'm like, oh, okay. Like where they changed their mind a million times. I said, well, yeah, those stories are important too. I mean, those are big boy stories. Yeah. So, but if you end up doing that Vegas thing, because I think we're playing. I think we.
What other aren't you? because before you came on, I had to do some recon, and is it Depeche Mode tribute?
Yeah, they're doing a lot of shows with us.
Now,
Uh,
are you doing that with the are you doing some of those shows?
I'm not playing drums with them. There's a Depeche tribute that comes on. They're doing, I don't know, we've done like 20 shows with them already, and we've got about another 10 or 15 shows with them, and it's crazy how much that band is like Depeche Mode. They've got the moves and the songs and the vibe down as good as you could have it with a tribute. And right now, Depeche is out traveling and touring, and I think the cheapest tickets are $400. And so if people can spend $40 and see a Depeche tribute for a lot less, and then have our show, they're doing okay. But they're fun. Yeah, they're awesome. So they're on a
Okay.
bunch, but they're not doing that run of shows with us. But
All right. I just thought because I saw a Columbus, Ohio show, and I didn't know if
oh,
you were doing that with them or are they on tour with you? I mean, I thought you were with that group doing that was maybe one of your other gigs.
no, no. In fact, we're playing Kent, Ohio, July 21st with them and Bow Wow Wow.
All
I Want
right.
Candy. Yeah. So what? You're in Columbus?
Yeah. If you Canton, you got the Pro Football Hall of
Oh,
Fame.
believe me,
The
not a lot of Seahawks in there, but they got a couple. Yeah.
you got the McKinley tomb.
Well, I'll
President
tell you what else. I'll tell you what's there. Can't tell my singer, but he knows this about me. I'm a hardcore roller coaster guy, and so you're in roller coaster country right now. Like I like Cedar Point. I got to get the. And so if we ever have time off or early, if there's a day where we got a late sound check, I hit the roller coaster parks. And so when I see Ohio on the calendar, I'd love to see Canton. I'd love to go see the NFL Hall of Fame, of course, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but I'd rather hit Cedar Point and go hit the coasters. So, but
have you rode the Orion in Kings Island?
no, I'm not.
It's a 300-foot,
Is that a
whatever they
wood?
call it now. No, it's steel or whatever. Was
It's
that
like
Giga or whatever they call
yeah,
them? I
Giga
don't.
Coaster. Yeah,
But now have you been to Kings Island?
I have not.
You never rode the
Wait, no,
Beast.
wait, that's the Cincinnati. Yeah, we
Yeah.
just played that. Yeah, we did that one June. So whatever, I've ridden everything at Kings Island. I just
All
didn't
right.
realize Orion was it. Yeah,
All right.
yeah, we
But
played
you
with
rode
the.
the Beast, the big wooden one,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
That's the one. Now Canton, there is I'll send you some photos. There's a the hell was it called? Anyways, there's a abandoned amusement park um right off 71 somewhere, and um and it's all covered with it was there for like 40 years, maybe
Oh
stopped
wow.
in the 70s or something. And even 15 years ago, like the old ballroom was there. um but you're just basically walking through woods and you'll come across uh this old the old frame of the roller coaster. Or
Yeah,
do you know how like they have, like, let's say you leave the dock or whatever, and it goes to go up the hill, and you kind of got like the concrete with the metal wires kind of like
yeah.
out to that. You can still see those are still there.
Wow.
And so yeah, you got some time off, we'll go track down that old abandoned amusement. But there's a Ferris wheel that's
Oh
still
yeah.
out there. Here, I'm going to show it to you right here. I just found it.
So yeah, so
Um,
we're playing Cedar Rapids July 19th. We get a day off on the 20th, and then we play the 21st in Kent, and then the 22nd Chicago. So the 20th, if I can get into a park, and
you, yeah,
I
it's
need a local to help me out with the Ohio hangs.
yeah, definitely. There used to be where Canton is. There used to be a Six Flags that was like Geauga Lake for a while. That's abandoned too. So if you like
Wow.
go on YouTube, people do the drones,
Yeah.
and I think there was an abandoned SeaWorld
Oh
uh,
wow.
next to it as well. So
That's so sad.
it's just cool seeing all these big places, and they're just sitting there
Yeah, like
rotting,
dinosaur bones.
yeah, just rotting away. um all right, dude. Well, I probably kept you long enough.
This is fun, man. I'm really,
Yeah,
I dug getting to know you.
yeah. I'll definitely be seeing you at some shows, and yeah, I sent Kelly a text, told him that you said everything, that was in the write up, and said that he was a good guy and everything. So
Yeah, I'll
so
tell him I expect the $20 in
yeah,
PayPal later
yeah.
tonight.
I think he said Venmo, so
Oh,
check
okay.
check there. Um, yeah, so we'll
Oh, you
definitely
know
have
what?
to.
I was just going to tell you because if your fans have all seen, a great side of Kelly, and you do a great job of asking questions that are unorthodox and atypical. I've had Kelly on my show, on my podcast. So if you go to accesskevin.com, there's an archive of all of my old shows as well. And they can maybe go through and get a different perspective. But I've got a brand new one that I shot um, at his house recently where we hung out behind his drum set and back by the pool that I was getting ready to release just for members of the podcast
Yeah,
too.
we
So
yeah we can't advertise that. That's gonna make us look.
well, all
Yeah,
we do is talk about Josh, and fans in motion, But
yeah,
yeah,
like you
it's a
know,
synergistic thing, bro. We
yeah. Like but yeah. So where can people find you? What Facebook and Instagram stuff do you got out there?
Yeah, I would tell people just go to kevinrankin.com. Everything is there. Links to the socials are there. There's a link to the podcast, and I
The
think you and I
the
definitely
podcast is all access. Is that what
all
it's
access live.
called?
Yeah,
Okay.
so if you go to accesskevin.com, that has all those, and it, just like we just wing it. And a lot of conversations with musicians, great, great convos, and some pretty, heartfelt, moving. Yeah, there have been some that just changed my life, man. I did Tawny Kitane's last interview just before she passed, actually, and that was a special one. There were a good handful that were pretty awesome.
Mhm.
So as you know, man, it's
Yeah.
fun to see a side of somebody you wouldn't normally see on stage.
Well, that's what you mentioned Tawny, and two things comes up where the first time I you know went and like at this time I wasn't doing anything with Night Ranger, it was just Kelly. So I flew down to Houston 2021, and that night I was there. So I go out, I'm eating dinner with Kelly and Jack, and it's like, what the fuck am I doing here? And but she passed away that night. So I always kind of remember that. um but I don't know what the fucking other thing I was going to say.
That
uh
was this week, 2 years ago. Yeah,
oh well, we had Greg Eckler, who was in Rubicon
yeah.
with Jack and Kelly, and we did kind of like what we did, but even more. We talked about his whole life growing up, because he actually grew up on the other side of the river in Cincinnati, and um, he had some great stories. He was at the Monterey Pop Festival with Hendrix, and when Hendrix
Wow.
lit that guitar on fire and
Yeah.
broke it, he got a piece of it. But
Holy shit.
he had it for years and eventually sold it to like maybe the museum in Seattle. That kind
Okay.
of funded his
Yeah.
retirement a little bit. But he played with Ricky Nelson, and he stopped playing
Yeah.
with Ricky Nelson right before the plane wreck. And so we got all these great stories. And he was like, I think, our first interview. And um, and he passed away just like 2 months after that. So it was great,
Shit.
to get that history,
Yeah.
um, on recorded. And so I get what you're saying when you get some emotional moments.
Yeah.
Someday we'll be like, remember when we had that interview with Kevin Rankin before he went to jail for trying to push Kelly Katie down the
Oh
elevator?
yeah. Yeah, man. It'd be like going to jail for dancing on the stripper pole with Brad, and in the foreign country.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that.
He's a better dancer than I am. I'm just gonna say that. He's got moves, man. Mhm.
Bra- Brad's Brad's a good guy. I remember me and Eric were walking, somewhere in one of these cities, and just, before, a show or something, and I get a text from Brad. He says, "You two make a good couple."
Nice. He's
And
got
I'm
his
like, all
wife
right,
again.
where the fuck is he? And he was in a restaurant behind us, so we went back. But you know, um,
Yeah,
but
he's the ham.
yep. Well, I appreciate you joining us, and everybody go check out. Now it's Kevin Rankin, the musician, not the actor. Is there an actor? We need to get rid of this guy, or
Well, yeah,
time travel, and your name is, you know, Kevin Van Rankin or
right. Yeah.
something, or
I do get people that will send me messages saying, "Are you the real Kevin Rankin?" Like, yeah, I'm the Kevin Rankin, man. I've had the domain. Our when I was with Animotion, our singer did a movie with him, and I told him, I said, "We've got to hang. I got to meet the dude because we. I think if we exchange each other's profile pictures on Facebook for a week, it'd be kind of fun, But he's done some of the best shows out there in
yeah,
Breaking Bad. Every time Breaking Bad episode comes on, people are sending me screenshots with the credits, and I think,
yeah,
damn, I need
they're
those
like,
royalties.
there's people going to Flock of Seagulls, like, man, he was a good actor. Let's go
Right.
check him out now. And they're like, who the fuck's this guy?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, no shit.
but anyways, guys, go check him out. Go check out all the socials. I'll put a link in the bio there. And listen, if you don't have anything on the weekend, you see Flock of Seagulls are coming to town, go get the LA gear or LA whatever looks hair gel, get your hair going, and
Aquanet.
go see a show and relive 1982 all over again.
There you go.
All right, Kevin, I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Josh. Right on, buddy. Have a great one, man.
Used to call me by my first name. Yeah, now you don't ever even call me at all. Now you say that I'm the one to blame. Say, hey, Joe!